Welcome to part 9 of the Conspiracy Iceberg, an ongoing series on the channel where I take us all through a nearly 30-layer iceberg all about conspiracies and everything alike. Today we are continuing our progress of layer 7 of the 30-layer iceberg. So if you are new to the channel and you want to start from part 1, I will leave a playlist below of the entire conspiracy iceberg up to this point. But before you watch part 1, just note that I was a lot more mean and blunt when I made part 1. I was more focused on debunking and calling out theories instead of just reporting them to you all. So if you really want to, I'm going to leave the playlist with part 1 in there, but I would pretty much just skip it. It's already theories that everyone knows anyways. You could even just start from this part and work your way backwards as well, but you will see a regression in the kind of content that has been made. I definitely gotten a lot better as this series has gone on, but without further ado, let's get on to the rest of layer 7. But right before we do that, I do have to thank the sponsor of today's video, FlexiSpot. I honestly have a lot to say about the desk that I got from FlexiSpot because it is easily one of the best products I've gotten from any sponsor that I've ever worked with. It was as easy to assemble as IKEA furniture. It had such an easy to use interface to allow the desk to go from sitting to standing, which I surprisingly found myself using quite a bit. And you have 3 buttons that allow you to set specific heights for activities that you find yourself doing a lot. For me, 1 is for sitting down, 2 is for standing, and 3 is for my personal favorite, relaxation mode. Gets both my monitors at the perfect height so I can just sit back and enjoy my late night Discord session with my boys. I personally have their E1L desk, but they have tons more standing desks that are easy to assemble and easy to use. And don't worry if you see the pictures and think that it won't fit in your room. I also thought the same thing. The picture for this one has the little side table on the left, but when I received it, I was happy to find out that you could rearrange it either way you want. I was able to put the L slab on either side of my desk with no issues. So if you're looking to upgrade your PC setup, your work area, or even just get a gift for someone that really needs an amazing desk, I would suggest getting FlexiSpot. They're having an amazing Black Friday sale right now, so I'll be leaving a link below to their Amazon storefront if you all want to go and check that out. Again, thank you to FlexiSpot for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get on to the first item on today's video. Windshield pitting epidemic. During the 1950s and the 1960s, there was a mysterious case that took place in Seattle known as the windshield pitting epidemic. Essentially what was happening over there was people began noticing their car windshields develop these strange pits and cracks. But where did they come from? This was the exact thought that people back then had, and it sparked tons of theories about where the cracks' origins were. From people thinking outrageous stuff like aliens marking cars to take people, to some more mundane ideas like industrial pollution causing the glass to crack. The widely accepted explanation for this epidemic was that people just didn't notice that their cars were naturally accumulating all of these little cracks in their paint and windshield until it was already too late. As somebody who knows and owns a lot of detailing stuff and frequently details his own car, I can tell you firsthand that this issue has a much more simple explanation. So when you drive on any road, whether it be the local streets around your neighborhood or even on the freeway, there's tons of tiny debris and rocks that get sent at your windshield. And gradually over time, from driving so long, you will accumulate tons and tons of these little guys. If you don't believe me, next time you wash your car, whether it's one of those DIY car washes or the ones where you just leave your car in neutral and get pushed through, run your finger across your paint and your windshield the next time that happens, because you'll be surprised to find a lot of very tiny rocks embedded in your window. You'll feel a very rough edge, almost akin to like sandpaper, except it's more spread out instead of being very close together like sandpaper. And because cars will naturally accumulate all of this kind of debris on the windshield, all of the air pushing up against the windshield over time can cause these tiny cracks and pits to form. So I think it's safe to say that this is the explanation for why this epidemic happened. As for why so many people started questioning the same thing at the same time is still a mystery. Purple spheres. For this one, I found 2 explanations in my research. The first one suggests the existence of these purple orbs that people claim are descending from the heavens. Imagine looking up only to witness these mysterious purple things falling from the sky. One thing that is unclear is whether or not the people that have experienced seeing these purple spheres in the sky were on any type of hallucinogens. And I only say that because just from my experience researching so many theories over the last 2 years, it's always somebody that is on some kind of psychedelic or hallucinogen that begins seeing these things first. Regardless, people have taken the possibility of these spheres existing as credible evidence of extraterrestrials or some catastrophic event. And more evidence from this comes from ancient texts and folklore that people point to as proof that these occurrences are actual phenomenon and not just some run-of-the-mill UFO sighting. The second explanation for the purple spheres are these weird jelly-like spheres that appeared in the Arizona desert. One of the possible explanations for this was their striking resemblance to deco beads, which I'm sure a few of you are familiar with people assuming that someone must have come out to the desert and dumped them there. As to why they would dump them there, no one really knows. And it's that line of logic, that questioning of why somebody would even do that in the first place, that has led many to assume that it has to be some kind of alien jelly life form that just randomly appeared in the Arizona desert. Dogon Tribe. The Dogon Tribe in Mali is most known for their knowledge around stars, specifically one star named Sirius B. This star gave the Dogon Tribe a ton of credibility as they were able to correctly identify where the star was and the shape of the star way before any kind of advanced technology was able to do so. Astronomers in the West were able to figure out the star's existence and correctly identify it during the 19th century. And it had apparently been common knowledge that was passed down through the Dogon Tribe well before the 19th century. This has obviously sparked a ton of controversy over whether or not the Dogon Tribe has some unforeseen science or knowledge that is beyond what is thought to be possible. ERKII. The only thing I found on ERKII, or I think it's an acronym, it's spelled ERKII. I'm just going to call it ERKII for short because I really don't know what to call this. So from my understanding, ERKII is a concept in neurological practices that has to deal with feedback, specifically when somebody receives feedback. The concept delves into how getting certain feedback at a certain time can actually make it more effective. For example, let's say that you learn something new. Let's say you took on a new hobby, or you're trying to get your homework done, or whatever project you're doing around your house, and once it's finished, whoever's in your house walks up to you and tells you good job. That feedback, that positive feedback of hearing the words good job, will always have an effect on you, and it'll be a great feeling, right, to be told, wow, I did a good job on this. Now ERKII basically says that getting that feedback, getting that good job too quickly or too late can actually affect how effective that positive reinforcement is. And it goes on to explain that there is some kind of niche time where getting the feedback can be extremely helpful and actually push you beyond what is capable of the human mind. As for how that ties into being a conspiracy, I wasn't really able to find. I'd imagine it has something to do with a person becoming supernaturally smart through a process of getting feedback on the right timing, or maybe this is just a single step into the deep dive that is the human brain. Stuxnet revival studies. There was a virus released that was supposedly created by the US and Israel that targeted Iran's nuclear weapons. Nicknamed the Stuxnet, it was meant to target the machines used in Iran's nuclear facilities instead of simply attacking computers like a normal virus would. This means that this specific virus or string of code was able to specifically target important parts of their machines that allowed it the ability to stop them from working entirely. That's what Stuxnet is. So what is Stuxnet revival studies? Well, exactly as the name would suggest, people assume since the virus was made and it exists somewhere out there in the ether of the world, that it's entirely possible someone is right now trying to use that virus or revive the virus for their own personal gain. And with such a string of code and a virus, you could potentially stop tons upon tons of grand machines that are essential to the world and society functioning. Human hunting. This disturbing theory suggests that big government or big secret groups, like the New World Order stuff that we've gone over in this series, are engaging in the organized hunting of people. If you've ever heard of the book World's Most Dangerous Game, it is a book about a man being chased down by a huntsman who got bored hunting traditional game and now wants more of a challenge. So he decides to take on humans as that challenge, substituting for the game that he was originally hunting down. This concept is basically the same as that, except start tying in like rituals and secret facilities where these games take place, and you might start to see exactly where the conspiracy in this lies. Omphalos. When I looked this one up, I kept getting the same result, which was the Omphalos hypothesis, which seems to explain the same type of narrative as Last Thursdayism, which is another entry on an earlier part to this series. So in case you missed that and you haven't seen it, it's essentially the idea that if God were really the creator of the world, like if God did in fact create everything that we know and did it only in a few days, who's to say that they didn't make the world last Thursday? Like, who's to say that everything that we have experienced and we know and can recall right now wasn't made like 5 minutes ago, right? That's what Last Thursdayism is. It's the thought that everything that we know in the conceivable universe right in this very moment was made last Thursday. Now, the way that ties into Omphalos is the idea that Earth was created by God to only look billions of years old, when in reality, it could very well only be thousands of years old. That is the main distinct difference between Last Thursdayism and Omphalos, at least from what I was able to read online. And the name Omphalos comes from Philip Henry Goss, who wrote the concept and hypothesized it in his book of the same name, Brain in a Jar. This is a scenario that lives on in science fiction. Right now, I want you to imagine that everything you're experiencing isn't really reality. What if your brain is actually in a jar that is being kept alive and is connected to a supercomputer that is simulating everything happening right now? That is what the brain in the jar theory is. Shades of the Matrix, I know, but this kind of talk of living in a simulation is no stranger to the scientific community. It's been theorized by many that it's possible we are in fact living inside of a simulation of some sorts, and you should all see this as another example of how exactly that would be going down. Now, the real question that the brain in a jar scenario tackles is, does that being real, like does the simulation being a real thing, make any of this fake? Like, let's say for a second that it is real. Let's say we are living in a simulation and we are experiencing just fakeness, right? Is it actually fake? Does that make any of this any less real, right? When I go and punch somebody on the street, or if I pinch myself, or somebody hurts me emotionally, like I'm feeling all of those things, right? Just because it's part of a bunch of zeros and ones, like, does that make it any less real of an experience? And if it doesn't, like, let's say that it is real, like let's say that those experiences are valid and they are real in this made up scenario, what does that extend to? Like, does that extend to video games? Like, if I make somebody in a video game die on purpose, is that me doing damage to a real person, or is it just all make believe? This is where this turns from just a conspiracy to a real info hazard, similar to Rocco's basilisk. Kundalini Energy. An energy that is described as being divine and shaping the entirety of the universe. Kundalini energy comes from Hinduism and is believed to be part of the body located at the base of the spine. This divine energy, when properly practiced and cultivated, is said to lead to a so-called spiritual liberation. The spiritual liberation can also be given the name the Kundalini Awakening, which is supposed to be the release of pent-up dormant energy stored in every single person alive in the world. If you've ever watched Dragon Ball Z, which is, I know is a random reference, just think of when Gohan attains the Kai form by releasing all that dormant energy. It's sort of like that. Now, the accounts of people achieving this range from people experiencing extreme euphoria to very unsettling sensations in the mind and body. And it's supposedly achieved through practices like meditation, yoga, and just intense focus. Some have even expressed that you are on the path to a Kundalini awakening if you begin feeling a sense of purpose, a desire to change your life, or a sudden heightened intuition. USSR never collapsed. It is obviously widely accepted that the USSR collapsed the day after the Cold War ended, dissolving on December 26th of 1991. But what if it didn't? What if actually it was all a hoax? Proponents of this theory believe that it was in fact all a hoax and that the Soviet Union never truly dissolved, believing that the transition period was just too smooth of a transition for it to be a complete accident, and rather it was all planned from the very beginning to throw away any ounce of suspicion, even going as far as to bring into question whether or not the Cold War truly ended, with many pointing to the fact that Russia has continued to try and reassert itself globally, which has been taken by advocates of this theory to be very reminiscent of what the original USSR might do. Antikythera Mechanism. This ancient Greek device was found in 1901 in a shipwreck off the coast of the island of Antikythera. It gained notoriety as being one of the most complex artifacts that has puzzled historians for decades. Given its design, it is believed to be a mechanism created to track celestial events such as the movement of the sun, moon, or even the planets. This mechanism is said to be operated by a series of gears and rotating dials. By turning a hand crank that was located on it, one could even set the date, and the device would seemingly perform a bunch of complex calculations to display whatever it was originally used for, similar nowadays to how a basic clock on the wall functions, minus obviously the cool ancient look. What's different from this than just a regular old clock is that there was obviously no electronic components. All of it functioned purely because of the ingenious design of the Greeks. This device's existence has even brought into question our understanding of how smart old civilizations were. And what I mean by this is, if they were able to produce such an amazing device all the way back then, who's to say that they didn't have even crazier technology that we just haven't discovered or has even been lost to time? And even though we can't fully comprehend what these devices might have been used for during their time, we can still marvel at the thoughts and design that went into them. Theosophist Geology. Theosophy is a philosophical movement created by Helena Blavatsky in the 19th century. This concept brings a more spiritual interpretation of geological processes. For example, someone who believes in theosophy views the earth as undergoing a series of physical and spiritual cycles that, over the course of millions of years, have led to the evolution of life and overall consciousness. Believing that the rise and fall of continents over time should be seen as symbolic reflections of the ongoing spiritual evolution of mankind. Anatta. Anatta tackles the idea that you and everything around you are all interconnected as part of a constantly changing state. Even though I can't remember it and recall it right now, I know that I talked about an earlier entry on this iceberg in one of the earlier parts that had to do with what exactly an object was. So to get this point across, I'm going to explain the same example that I explained in that one, which is to look at a table, right? If we look at any kind of table, if you really think about it, right, these are just a bunch of pieces of wood put together so that we can put things on top of it, right? But if you take it apart, it would be nothing more than just a few scrap pieces of wood. And you yourself, whoever is watching this, you are just a bunch of atoms and parts arranged in a way that make you, you. But if someone were to rearrange all of those bits, if they were able to have the power to just pick you apart and rearrange you into any other shape, you might as well just be food for the animals, right? Like, you could literally just be a pile of mush. This means that you and everything that exists around you are somehow interdependent, and In some way, shape, or form, there is a shared experience between you that is constantly changing and lacking what's called permanent essence. Anatta rejects the idea of a permanent, single, unchanging core, and rather takes a deeper look into what is really going on with everything in the conceivable universe. Mount Kailash. Mount Kailash is a mysterious sacred mountain in the Trans-Himalayas that has a ton of spiritual beliefs attached to it. People that have traversed the mountain and experienced it firsthand report feeling a strange phenomenon around Mount Kailash, stating that time appeared to pass by quicker and the hair and nails on their body would grow at a faster rate than they'd ever seen before. A prevailing theory about Mount Kailash is that it's a man-made pyramid with potentially a center made up of complex, smaller pyramids. Some of the people that have attempted traversing the mountain also expressed how it was an incredibly difficult task, theorizing that the position of the mountain changes once you begin climbing it. I think as of right now, to my knowledge, no one has reached its peak, but that has obviously not stopped people from trying. Another weird fact about this place is that people report Mount Kailash to cast a shadow that is very reminiscent of a swastika. Now, I think instead of what you might be thinking in your head, which is just a literal shadow in that shape, it appears to be more of the side of the mountain that begins showing these shapes when it's engulfed in a shadow. Here's a picture of what I'm describing of the mountain being in that exact state of being engulfed in a shadow. Although I don't really see the shape personally, but let me know down below if you are able to see the swastika in the side of the mountain. Report from Iron Mountain. The report from Iron Mountain is controversial for being a book that acts as a report from the government. The book itself dives into a world where peace is finally achieved, and it seeks to explain what would happen if humanity actually managed to achieve such a feat. It details this entire experience through the use of a panel made up of 15 people called the Special Study Group. The Special Study Group meets in an underground bunker called Iron Mountain, which is where the name Report from Iron Mountain comes from. It appears that the book is literally just the report from the 15 people, and it details how war has historically played a crucial role in maintaining social stability, expressing how a common enemy such as war is needed, otherwise we risk society collapsing into anarchy, suggesting that without war, there is a need for a substitute for war. This report proposes several alternatives, such as a fabricated environmental crisis or fake alien threats, just so people will maintain cohesiveness and stay together. Because of its contents, people have theorized that the book is an actual report from real government officials that were trying to stick it to the man. And before we end off this entire thing, I wanted to say that I do really like the idea that the book is going for. Of course, I don't personally believe it's true, but the concept that war is needed for humanity to function properly is definitely something that holds a lot of merit, at least when talking about the common enemy aspect of the entire theory. If anyone recalls that episode of Malcolm in the Middle where the neighborhood throws a block party after Malcolm's family leaves, then you kind of already understand the concept of a common enemy. In that episode, it leads the family to realize that they are the common enemy for the entire neighborhood, meaning that the entire neighborhood bonds from hating this one family that lives there. And I think this concept is true in many other aspects of life. One situation I think most can draw experience from firsthand is work. A lot of us definitely bond over hating our bosses or our managers. I think they're an easy target for being a common enemy, or the office Karen can be an easy target that fosters a sense of community in the workplace. Even in something as niche as the Smash community do we see this type of thing going on, like when Leffen was one of the most hated players. I know that it banded a lot of people together on both sides, both against him and for him, and I think it speaks volumes that this common enemy aspect can be seen in so many ways that I do kind of believe on some level that it is possible humanity does need a common enemy. As for that common enemy, needing to be war? I'm not so sure. If you have another example of this in the comments, please share it. Feel free to leave it below, as I'd love to see what your thoughts on the matter are. That will bring us to the end of today's video. So if you made it to the end of this one, thank you for watching. It's honestly awesome that I've been able to do this. I made a community post recently just talking about like how awesome it's been, like being able to do YouTube full time and like not really worry too much. Yeah, and one of the reasons I don't worry as much is because of the Patreon members, which leads me to the Patreon shout out. If you are on screen, thank you. Like, from the bottom of my heart, like, thank you. I really, every time I get to this part of the video, I start smiling because I'm just like, dude, like, I just can't believe people are really like supporting me, you know, like y'all are amazing. I think it's so cool that everyone is choosing to support me even when I'm not like super consistent with uploads. I think this month I'm going to have a lot more than usual, but it's just awesome knowing that I have all of you to back me up and support me. Not even just on Patreon, but just in general, like in the comments and whatnot. And it's awesome. I have some amazing things planned in the coming months, and I am just so excited and so thankful that I get to do that as my job. So thank you a lot if you're watching this. If you're curious as to what's on the Patreon, it's mostly just like uncensored content, behind the scenes footage, and sneak peeks to my upcoming uploads, as well as like 1-day early access, which everyone on here already got. So if you're watching this right now, someone has already seen this 24 hours before you. So if you want to go check that out, it's $3. I don't think it's like a crazy price. If you want to be on screen like everyone else, it is the highest tier, but $3 for literally access to everything else. And again, if you are part of the Patreon, thank you. Like, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I cannot express how much I am thankful for to be in this position. So, yeah. And with all of that said, I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.